So farming geodes gives you access to all these blocks, but I haven't built a farm for it yet. So let's build an insane geode factory. For this to work, I'm going to need to find a geode. If my memory is correct, I should have one down in my mines. I last used this to farm amethysts, which I then used in a spyglass over a year ago. Ah, here it is. I could just AFK and harvest it manually, but that's a bit boring, so let's build a farm. This geode won't work for my needs as I don't want to build a farm in this area. I have another geode over at the wool farm, but it won't work either. So how do you find the perfect geode? It's simple, you use an external tool. Now I could have just used chunk base for this, as it shows you where each geode is in the world. This is all the geodes that spawn in my world. For what I have planned, this won't work. I'm going to be using the Geode AFK spot finder tool by Russell Sprouts. This searches through your world looking for the perfect spot to AFK with as many geodes in range as possible. If I go to these coordinates, I will have 790 budding amethysts within range of my AFK spot. Now, I just need to get out there. Looks like we have an ocean at these coordinates. Hopefully this doesn't slow me down. So I'm going to use this stone pillar to mark out where the AFK spot will be. I'll be doing a large build here later. Plus, this will also allow me to set up a ladder so that I can get under the ocean to access the geodes. After digging around for a bit, I found my first geode in the area. I'm going to place a few torches stopping any hostile mobs from spawning. Then I'm placing this sign. I'm going to give each geode I find a number. This is because each geode is unique, meaning that I have to build a custom farm for each of them. To simplify this, I'm numbering each geode, then I'm copying it into a creative world. That way I can easily design the farms. With this first geode being found, let's locate the rest. I went ahead and dug a tunnel out to all the other geodes. I lit them up and gave each of them a number. After doing all of that, I've ended up with all of these geodes in my creative world. I've ended up with 16 geodes, each having a unique layout. Now, let's plan out the farms for each of these. I'm going to start with the first one here. I'm going to remove all the useless blocks, leaving only the budding amethyst blocks. These are the most important blocks in the farm, so try to avoid breaking them. Designing farms for geodes can become quite tricky and hard to comprehend, so I'd recommend using the GEODE mod. This will allow you to quickly design farms rather than having to spend several hours working out the quirks for each one. That, and it's super cool. A while back, Elmango did a video tutorial covering this mod. I'd recommend giving that a watch after this video if you plan on using it. After using that mod and working through all the steps provided on GitHub, I've ended up with this farm. The general idea is that these flying machines will activate periodically harvesting the amethyst within the farm. You'll probably want to connect this up to either a daylight sensor or a redstone clock of some sort. When the amethysts break, they'll fall into the water below, allowing for new amethysts to grow on the budding amethyst blocks. These amethysts will then be collected in a water stream where they can then be sent to a storage system. We'll be building a big storage system later on. For farms like this, I'd probably recommend using a shulker box storage system of some sort. I've also went ahead and designed the farm for the other geodes I was using, so let's head back into the hardcore world to start work on these farms. Before I start working these farms, I'm going to set up an nether portal so that travel between here and the rest of the world is faster. After getting the overworld portal set up, I jumped into the nether to disable the portal in there. Then I moved it up to the nether roof. With that being done, let's start working these farms. The first thing I need to do is gather resources. This project will require lots of different things, mainly slime and honey blocks. First, I'm going to focus on the slime blocks. A while back, I knew I'd need a lot of slime blocks for future projects, so I built this farm and have lots of slime blocks here in storage. I'll grab a few shulkers. When it comes to honey blocks, I did the same thing. I built this honey farm in the nether a while back and I've had it running in the background since it can be chunk loaded. I'll take a few shulkers from here as well. So that's both the slime and honey blocks collected. I've also went ahead and collected a few other things, including the pistons and observers. I may have to craft more of these later. The only thing left I need is moss blocks. Lots of them. For the moss blocks, I'm going over to my ocean monument transformation as I have a bone meal farm there. I'm going to modify it so that it gives me moss blocks. After using this farm for a while, I've got all the moss blocks I need, meaning all the resources have been collected. Arriving back at the project area, the first thing I'm going to do is set up a beacon. I'm going to be doing this right at the bottom of the world so that I don't need to move the beacon as often. With that being done, let's start working on the first geode. Geode number 1 will be my target. My first order of business is to remove all the blocks around it, giving me the room to build all the flying machines. I'm doing this stage very carefully so that I don't break any of the budding amethyst blocks. This is actually a lot of space. I've made sure to light this up as I don't want mobs spawning inside the farm. Next up, I'm getting these flying machines built. These flying machines are simple designs, so building them took no time at all. I got them built on all 3 sides. For farms like this, I use a Lightmatica mod since these farms can be quite complex. This mod allows you to have a blueprint in the world to work from, which speeds things up by a lot. Technically, this farm will now work, but the drops will go everywhere. To stop that from happening, I'm building an item collection system at the bottom, then I'm covering the whole thing in moss blocks. I've also went ahead and placed some of the activation system in the form of these redstone lines. You also may have noticed that I never placed the redstone clock. This is because I'll be building one at the AFK case spot later on. And with that out of the way, geode farm number 1 is complete. Let's move on to the next one. Before I move on to the next geode, I'm going into the nether so that I can use the gold farm to repair my gear. Let's just say I'll have to use this a lot for the rest of this project. So the second geode I'd like to build a farm for is a bit different to the one I just completed. This geode is far smaller, meaning that it should be faster to build. There's also quite a bit of water on top which will get in the way. This should be easy enough to deal with. I'll simply wall off part of it and use sponges. With that out of the way, let's start working on this farm. For this one, I'm changing the way I go about starting this by first digging out the borders of the farm. I'm also not clearing out space that I won't have anything in, as it just wastes time. When it comes to building the farm, it's fairly straightforward. I simply go layer by layer, double checking everything as I go. I'm also lighting this thing up, as having a creeper blow up here wouldn't be ideal. Now, Geode Farm 2 is complete. I'll be connecting this farm to the activation system later on. If I go down this tunnel, I'll end up at Geode 3. This one is a similar size to the first one. Once again, there's quite a bit of water in the area, so I dealt with that first. Sponges were very useful here. Now, I can build this farm. Mining this one out was surprisingly quick. It must be my new mining method. After I mined out the initial border, I removed all the amethyst blocks within the geode, allowing for the budding amethyst to be free to minimise the risk of breaking them. After that, I quickly started building the remainder of the farm, getting it all finished super quick. I am kind of tempted to activate the farms I've built so far since they're all fully grown, but I won't. It just means that the first harvest I do when everything is finished will be huge. Anyway, that's Geode Farm 3 complete. Geode 4, which is just down this ladder, is the first one that doesn't have any water or open caves connected to it. Let's build this one quick. With this geode not having any obstructions, I had the whole thing finished in only 30 minutes. I suppose the YouTube playlist I was watching helped speed this up. With that done, Geode Farm 4 is complete. So for the rest of the geodes I have in this area, I need to do things a bit different. Some of them are close together, which could cause problems. If they're too close, I'll only be able to farm one of them. Here is an example of two geodes that might be a problem. Since I've already designed a farm for both of these, I'm going to load up the farm schematic using Litematica to see if there will be any issues. Looks like these farms overlap, meaning that only one of them can be built. I'll be building the farm for the larger geode. What I'll do is I'll try to keep the other geode untouched, as every so often I'll need to silk touch the amethyst, so I'll use this geode for that. Since that'll be the case, I'm still going to clear out a small room around it. That way, all the amethysts can grow. With that out of the way, Geode Farm 5 is complete. I have another geode relatively close by. It's one of those larger ones. Looking at the schematic, this should just about fit. When I was building this one, I quickly discovered that it was closer to the other geode than I thought. This farm overlaps the previous one by one block. What I'm going to do to save me a bit of time is I'm going to make a few minor changes to the previous farm, that way this one will still work. After finishing that farm, I did a quick geode count and it turns out that I'm about halfway through the geodes in this area. I have two other geodes down here which I'm quickly going to build farms for each of them, taking me to the halfway mark. After getting all of that done, I went ahead and built the remainder of the geode farms in this area. Since they're all virtually identical apart from the amethyst bud placement and the flying machines, I built them all off camera. There were a few geodes here and there that I didn't use since they were close together, meaning that the farm couldn't be built. I may come back to this area in the future to build a few smaller versions of these farms. Now, I'd like to start finishing this project. First, I'm going to spend quite a bit of time going around lighting up all of these caves. I typically play with full bright on as it makes the video easier to watch on YouTube. That means that sometimes I forget to light things up. I actually ended up turning hostile mob rendering off during the time lapses due to that mistake. With that done, this entire area should now be mob free. There may be one or two hostile mobs still in the area, but that doesn't matter. I did all of this to slightly reduce the lag of this place. Moving on, I need to connect all these farms together. Currently, they're all independent, meaning that they won't function as one. Let's change that. First, I need an activation system. For this, I'll be using a hopper clock. Back when I was designing these farms, I ended up with this hopper clock which will run every 3 hours, which is the perfect amount of time to let the amethyst grow. Building one for every farm doesn't make sense, so I'll just build one of them and then I'll connect it to the rest using redstone. I plan on doing a large build above the water soon, so I'll build the hopper clock up here. I got this clock built super quick and I also built an area where I will stand while using this farm. Now, all I need to do is fill the clock with the items, meaning that it's good to go. Now, all I need to do is connect it to the farms below. Connecting the farms is a simple process. I simply need to dig a few tunnels, then run a redstone line between them. Due to the sheer size of this place, this took quite a while. Connecting these redstone lines to the clock above will be a bit tricky. To do this right, I'll wall off a small section of the ocean, then I'll drain it using sponges. Then I'll run a redstone line from this clock down to the farms. I'll build a staircase along the walls I just built, then I'll run the redstone lines on top of them. With that out of the way, all the farms are connected, meaning they'll function as one farm. Currently, if I activate these farms, all the amethysts harvested will be destroyed since I don't have a collection system. Let's build one so that I can test this entire thing. First, I'm going to build a few shulker loaders up here close to the redstone clock. I've used this shulker loader design several times in the world so far. It's simple and easy to use. Now I need to work on storing these shulkers once they're full of amethysts. I think I'm going to have this storage room connected to my AFK spot. This storage room is nothing special. It is a simple wall of chests that will be able to support me using this farm for thousands of days at a time. I'll never actually use it for that long. I also did some quick decorating using some blocks I had left over from the ocean monument interior, giving me this cozy storage room. Now let's focus on getting these items up here. Since I've already built the shulker loaders, I simply need to dig my way underground. This will be the water elevator, so I'll place some soul sand right at the bottom and I'll use some kelp to make sure this is all source blocks. I then made sure everything was connected properly up top since I don't want these amethysts going everywhere. Then all I need to do is go to each individual farm, dig below it, and dig mini tunnels that will contain water streams. I'll connect these water streams to the elevator, meaning this entire system is ready to go. To test this, I'm going back up to the redstone clock and I'll place a redstone torch which will activate all the farms. After a little while, items should start appearing in these shulkers. So I'll AFK here until all the farms have run. After a while, all the farms have activated, leaving me with all these amethysts, meaning that this massive amethyst farm is complete. Now before we move on to finishing this entire project, I need you to stop right there and hit that subscribe button. I'm currently on the road to reaching 100,000 subscribers, and so far I'm only 7% of the way there. At the end of this year, I'm going to be removing 1,000 blocks for each subscriber I get, so if you want to watch me suffer, subscribe. Speaking of suffering, let's finish this entire project by building something here on the surface of the ocean. The build I have in mind for this area will contain thousands of blocks, so I've went ahead and gathered all these shulkers full of materials. I'm going to end up using a lot of amethysts I just harvested in this build, so I'll be taking a few shulkers of amethysts from the storage system. So with all of that out of the way, let's finish this build. So this build was an interesting one. As always, I started by building the terrain the build would sit on. To save in time, I decided to have this island floating in the ocean. It looks a bit strange right now, but that doesn't matter. I'm going to connect this to the ocean floor at a later date. Since this is for an amethyst farm, I wanted to integrate amethysts into the surface build, so I decided that I wanted to build several custom geodes around the island. To make these visually interesting, I built a lava pool at the bottom of the geode. This should help the geode stand out in the end. Then, I built up the walls of the geode along with adding in bits of the final structure of this build. After getting the first of these custom geodes finished, I built 3 more, then made sure all the terrain I built so far had been connected. Then, after finalising that section, it came to the main build. For this build, I wanted something quick and simple, so I settled on building yet another pyramid. I based this design on Chichen Itza, but I put my own spin on it. For this, I focused on using blocks with a similar texture, mainly stone, stone bricks and cracked stone bricks. For a splash of colour, I added several grass platforms, and I also used anvils to build barriers which provided an extra level of detail. On each side, I built a staircase which would later allow access to the storage room below. At the top, I started working on the entrance. I ended up building a nether portal since I removed the one I was using earlier. Having this fully integrated into the build helped finish this off. Then, I added the final touches to the roof of this build by placing one last grass platform. With all of that being done, I finished yet another project in this hardcore world.